know who I feel bad for? Nu metal DJs. You know, the guys who when you opened up the liner notes to those old albums were listed under things like turntables or sampling or the ever-dreaded media. Christ, do you think the keyboard player had a hard time picking up chicks after the show? Try slinging yourself as the media guy. You'd have a better chance if you just changed into your street clothes and said you were a roadie. I say this because ever since nu metal died an abrupt and frankly well-deserved death in the mid-2000s, none of these bands have seemed to know quite what to do with their samplists once the scene shriveled away, and Linkin Park is a huge example of this. A great portion of what made their original sound so unique was the brilliant sampling and electronica from Joe Hahn, but once teenagers stopped bitching about their parents and actually discovered what a real problem was, they had to shed that nu metal label quickly and dye their hair back to a sensible color. Nu metal? What's that? We're an alternative rock band now. Here, check out Minutes to Midnight. Sure, we flayed our sound's originality right off the bone and replaced it with boring, generic mid-tempo slosh, but at least we aren't like those silly nu metal guys, are we? Oh, Jonathan Davis with your dreadlocks and your psychological issues. How adorable, am I right? Okay, all bullshitting aside, out of all the terrible bands that nu metal wrought forth into the world, Linkin Park was one of the few groups that were genuinely good. Probably the best in their genre, in my opinion, and it's broken my heart every time to pick up a new album of theirs, hoping to hear some of that old bombastness and vitality, and being lulled into a cozy little sleep instead. Minutes to Midnight? Yeah, more like listening to Lunesta. Frankly, I had given up on ever hearing a heavy album from this band again. I dreaded hitting play on this thing, but once Keys to the Kingdom started to kick into full gear, it left me with quite a shock. The band has finally connected with their rock roots again. In fact, I'd say this album is probably one of the heaviest things they've ever released. No fooling. Rob Burton really kicks it up a notch on this album, particularly on faster songs like Rebellion and the aforementioned Keys to the Kingdom. He spends plenty of time rattling across those toms, and frankly, he's not too shabby at it. He's no Lombardo or anything, but hey, for Linkin Park, it's pretty damn impressive. Not to mention, the guitars are finally back with a vengeance on this album. The distortion is very crunchy and abrasive, particularly on tracks like All for Nothing and War, though on the latter track I could almost swear they're lifting the riff from Pay to Come, but they do make up for it with a pretty kick-ass little solo towards the end, so I guess I can look past it. I honestly didn't know Brad Delson had it in him. Golf clap. Golf clap. The reinvigorated, aggro approach to the instrumentation works really well on this album, and it's fucking good to see it again. Even Chester Bennington's trademark shrieking hasn't dulled with age, or atrophied from underuse for that matter. He never goes full place from my head or anything, but he's effective in his delivery nonetheless. But even though I'm enamored by the band's balls-out approach to this album, it still isn't completely faultless. Again, we run into the DJ's dilemma. Joe Hahn's work has been pushed mostly to the background for this one, and honestly, I don't think it has to be. I mean, just because you guys are getting more aggressive doesn't mean you have to put little Joey in the corner. Let him help too. And some of the additional personnel they brought onto the album really do phone it in. Don't get me wrong, Darren Malakian and Paige Hamilton both bring their A-games to their respective songs, but Rakeem's presence is completely unnecessary on Guilty all the same. I honestly would have just preferred a Shinoda verse on that song. And sweet Christ, Tom Morello should be ashamed of himself for Drawbar. Seriously, it's a 2-minute instrumental of pointless noodling that could have been accidentally hammered out by a 10-year-old taking their first guitar lesson. I haven't seen Morello suck it this hard since Street Sweeper Social Club. For real, guys, whatever you paid him for his services, I hope you saved the receipt. But really, in the grand scheme of things, these are all nitpicks. Well, except for Drawbar, of course. But The Hunting Party is a damn solid album, nonetheless. If you're an LP faithful, then what are you still listening to me for? Go buy it now. But if you're like me and you've been hesitant for the past few years to get back into these guys, I say now is the time to jump back into the pool. It's a big return to form for them. And while it isn't perfect, it's a damn solid step in the right direction. A step I've been waiting 7 goddamn years for, but hey, better late than never. The Hunting Party gets 4 unemployed DJs out of 5.